Hi, everybody. Hey, welcome to CoreLight Spiritual Weather Report. It's April 24th, 2022. And this is Brad, and I'm here in the U.S., and my beloved Leslie is in South Africa. And I want to welcome all of you who are new to CoreLight. And I know we're getting more and more new people each month. And so welcome to you, and welcome to everybody who is returning, longtime CoreLighters. There are many of you with us as well. And wow, I've really been looking forward to today's call. It's such an intense time, and I'll bet many of you have been feeling that too. And I know that I've been saying that seems like every month for years. And even before I started doing these spiritual weather reports, Leslie was saying it every month for years, but it's the truth, you know, it is the truth. The degree of change that's happening in the world and the rate at which it's happening is extraordinary. So we're going to talk more about that today. We're going to focus a lot on change and how to cope with change, and how when we change ourselves, we change the world. And we're also going to take a look at what are some of the personal changes and some of the bigger collective changes that are happening in the world right now. And we're also going to revisit one of our topics from last month because it's still with us. And that is the topic of healing war consciousness and developing peace on the planet and within ourselves. So also, I don't want to forget, I'm very excited to announce that we have a special guest speaker today. And she'll be joining us at the end of the call. I'm going to let her remain a little bit of a mystery for now. She's the author of a very important book that came out last year, and I just finished reading it. And I just loved her book, so I wanted to invite her to join us. And I'll introduce you to her a little bit later at the end of the call. So for everybody who might be new to these calls, here's how they work. I start with offering a guided meditation, and then I'll speak about the prevailing energies that are affecting us and also about the spiritual principles that are most helpful for us right now. And we have time for questions and answers at the end, and we close our session with a guided meditation or a prayer or an exercise. Usually it's pretty brief. It's whatever we have time for to keep within the 2-hour limit. I try to keep it as close to the 2 hours as we can. I know that's a long time to be on a call. So if you need to leave before the call ends, you can always listen to the recording later, and we send out the link to our email list, and we also post the recording on YouTube. Before we get started, there were just a couple of quick things I wanted to mention. And that is, I hope that you all got the email that we sent out that Friday, just this past Friday, April 22nd, was Earth Day. And as you may know, Earth Day is also Leslie's enlightenment anniversary. She had her awakening experience in April 1988, April 22nd of 1988. So we always celebrate that day. It's a really magical story of her awakening, and she tells the story. She tells a little bit of it in the Marriage of Spirit book, and I tell about some of it, some more of it in my book, Living with Enlightenment. So I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank my beloved Leslie, who has given us so much. I know any of you who've been around CoreLight for any length of time, you know how grateful we all are to Leslie for all that she has given us with her audios and books and courses and her loving presence and her Shakti transmission, which is still with us. Lastly, also to celebrate Earth Day and Leslie's enlightenment anniversary last week, I made a little video, a little 3-minute video, and I hope you've had a chance to see it. It's posted on our website. You can go to CoreLight.org, go to the free resources page, and click on videos, and you'll see it's the first one on the page. And it's called Truly Seeing the Natural World. And it's just the most beautiful footage of Leslie that's never been seen before. I happened to stumble across it one day because I'm preparing to teach the Spiritual Warrior course this year on our new online learning platform, which we're busy installing. And I found this footage of Leslie in her prime. It was from 20 years ago, sitting in our beautiful garden in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And she just gives this most eloquent talk on truly seeing the natural world. So it's a very inspiring, uplifting 3-minute little video. If you haven't seen it yet, I invite you to go check it out. It's on our website, as I said. It's also on YouTube. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our guided meditation for today. And I invite you to sit down or lie down and close your eyes. Take a few long, slow, deep breaths. And just relax. Just relax and let go. I know we get so busy in our lives and we forget the importance of relaxation. So I invite you to take this opportunity, even if it's just for a few moments, to just put everything aside and just give these few minutes to yourself. Breathing deeply, relaxing and letting go. Continuing the breathing. The breathing is the most important part of relaxation. It's a physiological mechanism that when we breathe deeply, we're telling the brain, everything's okay. I'm safe. I'm comfortable. There's nothing threatening me. And the brain says, oh, okay. I'm going to release the happy hormones and I'm going to activate the vagus nerve running down the center of the body. Creates that little tingling sensation throughout the body, relaxes us deeply. And this is how we go yin. Yin being the feminine principle in Taoism. When we relax, we're open to receiving, surrendering, letting go of tension and welcoming in uplifting new energy and light. And that's the feminine principle, the receiving principle. So just continue to breathe, and as you breathe, I'll talk you through a little physical relaxation. Relaxing the muscles of the body from head to toes. I invite you to feel and visualize a warm liquid like honey pouring over the top of your head, relaxing all the muscles that it touches, relaxing your scalp and your forehead. Feel the honey pouring over your eyebrows and your eyes, and all of your facial muscles. Relaxing every single muscle. The ears, the nose, the mouth, the jaw. And just continue to breathe, and let's especially focus on the eyes where we hold so much tension. Just allowing all the many, many little muscles surrounding the eyes to relax. Eyeballs, the eyelids, relaxing so much that the eyeballs just gently fall back into your socket. Relaxing the jaw, and the back of the tongue, and allowing that whole region to relax, the back of the head, the neck and shoulders. And feeling the honey pouring down over these areas, down your arms, all the way down to your fingertips. Relaxing every muscle. Relaxing the chest and the upper back. Lower back, stomach. pelvis, the legs, all the way down to the feet and the toes. Just feeling all these muscles relaxing and letting go. Breathing in the light that surrounds you. Breathing out any tension or stress in the body. Allowing with each inhale, allowing yourself to fill up with light and life force. Exhaling any tension you feel in your body. Continuing your breathing, deeply letting go. I'll be quiet for a few moments while we all scan our bodies again from head to toes, just breathing and relaxing any place where we're still holding on to tension. Now as you breathe and relax, I invite you to receive the beautiful energy, the field of peace, as I like to call it, that surrounds us. And as you may know, at some level of her being, Leslie is overlighting these calls, and she gives us a transmission of healing energy that comes through from other levels. And so as we meditate and relax, we can receive this beautiful transmission of healing energy. In the East, it's known as Shakti. And this happens even when we're talking during the call. So you can be in meditation even during the talking part of the call. And whether or not you're with us live or you're listening to this as a recording, it doesn't matter. We're all part of this field and we're all connected because time and space don't really exist except in the third dimension. So we invite everybody to tune in to these other levels of reality beyond time and space, where we're all connected in the unity and in the heart and in love. And it doesn't matter if you feel the transmission or not, it's still happening. It's just the energy of love. There's nobody doing anything to you. It's just a field that you can receive if you want it. You can just set the intention that you'd like to receive it, and it naturally happens. I invite you to put your attention in the center of your chest, the heart chakra. Just feel the energy of love that naturally resides there in the heart. You can visualize it in the center of your chest like a miniature sun burning brightly. You can give it a color if you want. Maybe it's pink. Whatever color you like. Green, perhaps. And just feel it, see it inside your chest burning brightly, filling you up with love as it radiates. It's like a fountain that bubbles up from within us. It's our own energy of love, which is what we truly are. We're made of that energy. It's inside us, who we are. And it's okay if you don't feel it, if you're not in a loving mood perhaps, but you can set the intention that you'd like to feel it, and you will eventually at some point. And I invite you to visualize and feel your heart chakra opening out in front of your chest like a trumpet or a flower blooming in front of your chest. And feel that loving energy from inside you moving out the front of your chest and filling up your aura with love. You can visualize that beautiful color, pink or whatever color you're choosing, gold, green, to fill up your body and your aura. Feeling that energy of love spreading throughout your system. And now I invite you to feel and visualize the back of your heart chakra opening up. And that's like a flower or a trumpet opening up behind your heart. Opening up in back of you. And this is something that you may not be used to. We tend to focus on the front of the body, but by opening the heart chakra in the back, it's as though we're loving what's behind us, loving the past, loving the things that we tend to stick into the unconscious, that we may not be so happy to acknowledge. The parts of ourselves or other people in our lives who we tend to suppress, not want to be around. And so just as you open the back of the heart chakra, you just send love out the back and just feel it filling you up from the back, and you'll feel an energy shift. I can feel this is working well for our group. Just continue to allow that beautiful bright light in the center of your chest to emanate. And let it emanate out the front and the back of your heart, filling up your aura, filling up your body, front and back. And you might find that you get a smile on your face. You might find that you start to feel happy. Because that's the energy of love. It leads to joy. This is the progression. It begins with relaxation. It begins with deeply letting go of tension in the body and relaxing. And that's what brings peace, inner peace. And that's the foundation on which we build love. And from the love arises the joy. So as you allow those to build, it becomes a positive feedback loop. because the joy also feeds the relaxation and letting go. So I invite you to just continue the breathing, continue to allow this beautiful energy of love to fill you up and feel the peace and joy that goes with it. Just letting go. And I'm going to say a brief prayer and an invocation for our call today. While we all continue to let go and relax and generate love. Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Father God, the Self that we all are. We call on you, we call on all of our highest guides and teachers, all the angels and the beings that surround us in the highest love and support. And I invite each of you on the call to silently, inwardly invite in your highest guides that you know support you. Invite them into our call. We invite you in and we ask that you please surround us with a beautiful cocoon of golden white light and love and healing energy. Please guide our conversation today into the highest love and the highest wisdom. And hold our hands so that we may walk into our soul's highest purpose in this incarnation. We give thanks for the blessings we receive. We give thanks for the opportunity to be together today, to share our love, to sit in this beautiful field of love and light. And let's take a moment before we close to send this beautiful, loving, peaceful, healing energy out to the whole world. See it expanding beyond your body to encompass the whole planet. And see it as a field. This is a field that we all create together. There are usually a few hundred people from around the world who either participate live in these calls or listen afterwards. And we hold a powerful field of love amongst us. So whether you're with us live or listening later, we are all creating this field together. So let's visualize it surrounding the earth, permeating the earth. And let's see it supporting all life. That all people who are experiencing war or hunger or poverty or illness or any kind of adversity are uplifted and experience healing. And we send it out to the rest of the natural world, to all the plants and animals, and land and water systems, ecosystems. That these life forms may also know our love. That we share that love with them. It's what we all are made of. This is the force that all life is made of. So we literally are one at that level. We share this energy of love with everything on the planet. Well, I invite you to just take a moment to just feel that. Just feel yourself as love. Feel yourself expanded to encompass the whole earth. Feel yourself merged with all life. And we offer our thanks for this beautiful experience the beauty of this planet, the beauty of these bodies that we get to wear for a few short years on loan to us by Mother Earth. Amazing experience at this extraordinary moment, the most pivotal moment in human evolution, as we move out of the third density into the heart, into the paradigm of love. And we are here. We are the pioneers. We get to be the midwives, the doulas. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Alalaho. Okay. Well, welcome again, everybody. Sorry, it's hard to talk after these meditations, so I invite you to just remain in meditation if you want to. I know sometimes we have to multitask while we listen to these kinds of calls, so if you're free and available to just stay in meditation, just stay in this beautiful energy and receive. And even if you're busy doing, you can still just relax and receive. So the first topic I wanted to speak about today is about the massive change that's happening on the planet, both personally and collectively. And like I said, these massive changes are continuing to happen. I spoke about it at the beginning of the call. It's just incredibly intense. Given the degree of change happening and the rate of the acceleration of the change, it's massive. And so I know I've been talking about it a lot the past few months. And as I said, I think I've been saying this every month for years, but it is the truth. And I wonder if you're feeling it too. The changes lately have mostly been happening on the inner plane, but they're starting to show up in the physical. And it's been as though I've shared earlier in other calls that it's like the roots of the plant have been growing, and that's been happening for a while. And that's not visible change, but it's been preparation, let's say, for outer, more visible growth and change. And so it's like we're being prepared. And I wonder if you're aware of that. Are you feeling that we're being prepared for a greater awakening? We're building our capacity to hold more light and more awareness. And in terms of what we see in the world, of course, there's going to be a difference between what you see in your small world, in your own little private world, versus what's happening collectively. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, I don't know what you're talking about, because my life's pretty stable and it's okay, and I don't feel a lot of these changes happening. And if that's you, that's great. You can just consider yourself blessed to have some stability, because I think most people don't. And so even though that may be true for some people, for many people, there's been this massive change happening personally in very noticeable physical ways. And there's still massive change happening energetically on the inner planes, and I mean that the inner changes are happening collectively, globally, as well as personally. So there's this great opportunity right now for ending an old cycle and starting something new. And it might be with a relationship or with your home or your job or something like that. And it might be a challenging time for you or for other people you know. There are many people experiencing the loss of something or someone or a pet. And it's a time of letting go. It's time to let go of the old, and it's a time to grieve. And whenever we experience major change, it's always important to focus on letting go of an old way or a familiar form in our lives and grieving that loss. And as I said, we've talked about this so many times on these monthly calls because this theme of major change has been with us for so long. And this is an especially important time to focus on it right now. Because if you just look at what we've been through on the planet for the past 2 years with COVID and with all the changes in the world that are associated with that, it's been this extraordinary time of letting go of an old way of life that we used to know. Nothing is the same anymore. And we're going to continue to go through those big changes. So I felt like bringing this topic up again as a reminder. And as I said, it's important to take time to feel whatever grief you're experiencing around the loss of these old forms. And this can be anything, from something big like the death of somebody you love to smaller things as well. But it's also important to acknowledge that this can be an inspiring time as well. And if you're feeling especially uplifted and inspired, that's fantastic. And it's not something that we need to feel guilty about just because other people might be experiencing the grief and the loss, or because you should feel sad about the changes or the challenges that people are having in these times. And you might be experiencing both, inspiration as well as grief. And I know that's what I'm experiencing. I know a lot of people who are experiencing a mixture of both. So it's good to allow the grief and express it and give the heart its due, as I like to say, and let it out, let it go. And it's also equally as important to feel inspired and excited when you're ready for that. So are you feeling that? Are you feeling this amazing birthing of new energies coming forward on the planet right now? I would love to hear from you if you are. It's really helpful for me to hear from you. And I think you know, but if you're new, you can always write to me and you can share what you're experiencing. And the email address is courses@corelight.org. So there's that, but on the other hand, I know it also feels like we're in an existential crisis. And at that level, it feels like life on the planet is hanging in the balance. And I know that can sound really scary and it can feel overwhelming even to think about it. But I think it's important to name it and to realize that we're in a very momentous time right now, and to not get lulled into complacency, because it's easy to get distracted. There's so many things going on, and we forget what an extraordinary time this is. And if it brings up fear or overwhelm or whatever, then it's important to process those things in whatever way you know how. But I also think that we need to acknowledge the extraordinary energy of the birth of a whole new paradigm that's really coming in right now. And that's what's so exciting. And I know for many of you too, it feels like the birthing of a mass awakening. So mostly I feel it on the inner planes, but I also catch glimpses of it manifesting in the outer world. And I hear from some of you who are, like me, just feeling super excited, and you're experiencing this newfound sense of freedom and joy and inspiration and creativity. And that's what I'm feeling. It's like I feel like there's this new chapter in life that's starting, and to me it feels like not just a new chapter, but it's a whole new book, and I feel like I can write it any way that I want to. It's a whole new beginning in life. And as I said, I know many other people who are feeling this way, so I feel both things are happening, and it's important to be aware of both aspects as much as we're able to. I'm just going to take a sip of water. Just give me a second here. Thank you. So I have a little personal update I wanted to share with you because there are some aspects of it that I thought might be helpful around this month's theme of change. Some of you know about this, so forgive me, it'll be a repeat for you if you're a friend of mine. But I had a surgery on March 31st. It was just a few days after the last spiritual weather report. And it was a surgery to heal an old neck injury where there were two vertebrae that were pinching the nerve on the right side of the neck. And so because of that, I was unable to turn my head fully to the right for many years. And I've also had a low-grade inflammation and pain there, and it was getting worse with time to the point where I started feeling numbness and tingling in the right hand and the right foot, so I knew I needed to do something about it. And I learned about a new kind of surgery using ultrasound that can open up the space between the vertebrae to allow for the nerve not to get pinched. And I know that this surgery is a lot less invasive than the way it's usually done, and it's outpatient surgery, which is pretty amazing. And it's just a little 1-inch incision. It's not a big deal like it used to be. So you still have to go under general anesthesia, but still it's fairly low risk with very high potential benefits. So anyway, I had a few insights about the surgery that I felt I should share with you. I've been aware of a few different layers of healing going on, and there's the personal level, but I'm also aware that it was more than just physically fixing an old injury, and I've seen that it goes beyond that. And I wanted to talk about it in case it's helpful to you, because we all do this. I'll explain what I mean. So at a personal level, it's been an opportunity to surrender more deeply, to go yin, as I was explaining in the meditation, to rest and relax and receive support, nurturing, and all of that. And there's something so healing and nurturing when we're given those opportunities. And I know lots of people who have been in a similar place. There are people who've been sick with flu or COVID or what have you, and we've been invited into this experience of the yin, which is so powerful and productive on the inner level. And in our culture, we're taught that to rest and relax and to go yin is to be weak. But the truth is the opposite. That's an old misconception that the yin side is powerless and weak, the feminine side being the yin side. And so it's pretty well ingrained in our culture that it's only the yang side or the masculine side that is strong and powerful, which is, of course, a load of nonsense. Both sides are equally powerful. They're just powerful in different ways. And one is inner and less visible, and one is outer and more visible. So I've been fighting the temptation to jump back into the yang, the doer mode, and be productive in an outer kind of way. And I'm just allowing the time for the healing, which feels so important. And I hope that's helpful for me to talk about it now, just in case you might be in a similar place, because we need to give ourselves the permission to stop. And just sometimes we just need to rest and receive, and we need to let go of all of the stuff, the guilt and the shame and the feelings of worthlessness and all the garbage that comes with our programming around that. So that's a very important part of this. But I'm also aware that it's been an opportunity for healing at a much deeper level than just a personal one. And I've been aware that my going through this has been a healing of my patrilineal lineage. In other words, my father's fathers, and so on up the lineage. And I share this with you because I think it's important to remember that when we have a surgery or we break a bone or we have some kind of medical procedure, it's it's always an opportunity for an energetic healing or a karmic healing that goes way beyond just the personal physical level. And even if we're not conscious of what it might be, there's work happening at all those different levels. So I wanted to share this personal example with you to illustrate how it works in case that's helpful. And it's hard to describe, so please bear with me. But what I saw in meditation was that this life it's different. It's a different kind of life than probably 99% of all the men in my lineage, my father's lineage. And in meditation, I saw that I've chosen to break free from what we could call the slave system, the system of slavery in our world. And I know that that's true for almost everybody listening to the call, no matter what gender you've chosen to play this time around. It's been millennia that we've been slaves to the money system and to work and to the clock and so on and so forth. And so now we're being given the tools and the opportunity to break free from all of that. And we can choose differently. And as we heal and clear all of the patterning, the programming that we've received from our culture and our lineage, and as we awaken more and more to the truth of who we really are, which is love, we discover that we're not really slaves. And we don't have to continue to make the same choices that our ancestors did that keep us locked into that third dimensional system of slavery. We don't have to project authority onto the outside world anymore. We don't have to project our own power onto the people and the systems that keep us locked into separation and that keep us limited by the belief that we're the small self. So we can wake up to the bigger picture and the bigger truth of who we really are. And that's true freedom. So I saw that the healing of the neck is about a lot of things. And the neck represents being able to choose our direction in life. And healing the neck is also about healing the throat chakra, which represents our creative expression in the world and speaking, having a voice, expressing creativity and willpower, and also collaborating with our higher will. So just another quick aside about the personal aspect of this. The injury also goes into the right shoulder, and I know that the shoulders represent where we carry burden. And the right side is the masculine side. So for years, I've processed that pattern of what I would call burden bearing and self-sacrifice. And I've talked about some of that on these calls before. And I do because many of us on the spiritual path have heavy-duty programming from those lifetimes that I like to call the religious past lives. And so we come in with that programming of what could be called the martyr persona, where we feel we need to bear burdens and we need to self-sacrifice in order to be a good person and yada, yada, yada. And that's a big topic I'm not going to go into, but I think you know what I mean. And so what I know to be true is that when the body has an injury or an illness, it's the body talking to us and letting us know that there's something deeper to look at beyond the physical. There's some egoic programming or maybe a karmic situation or whatever it is that we're being asked to look at that's represented by the injury or the illness. And so as we clear that programming, that egoic patterning, and we become free from the habits, the routine ways of thinking and behaving, we heal the physical body, and then very often that's when the right medicine or the surgery or the healer or whatever it is appears to help us through the healing process. Because if we're clear of that egoic programming, then we don't need that reflection from the physical body anymore. So I know that that's what was true for me. And I saw that the same lesson also applied to all of those men in my father's lineage, because those were men who were very deeply wounded by the patriarchal system. 99% of them anyway. They all felt like slaves at some level of their being. They were, working at jobs that they hated just to be able to earn money to support their family, or they were forced to fight in a war, and they may have died young, or maybe they got wounded and they had to live the rest of their lives with a handicap, or somehow they felt trapped in a role, or they felt stifled from having their full expression in life. So, and I think some of them were persecuted for speaking truth, or maybe they carried really heavy burdens and felt victimized or emasculated in some way by the patriarchal system. So anyway, I saw that because I've done so much shadow clearing work over the past few decades, that I've come into the place where I'm helping to end that pattern in this lineage. And I know that I've cleared a path so that I can have my own full expression in the world. I can have a voice. I can speak my truth. I've cleared those patterns of burden-bearing, self-sacrifice, and I've broken free from those belief systems that keep us limited, keep us locked into the patriarchal system and make us feel like slaves to it. And I've balanced my masculine and feminine sides. And, that's also something that wasn't usually allowed to our ancestors, at least in the West. And so I know that in this life, we all have the potential to live longer than many of our ancestors did, because life was usually harder for them and usually shorter. And so I feel like this life it's such a privileged life. The freedoms that we have, the abundance that we have. And I would imagine if you think about it, you might see this for yourself too, or something similar. You might see what kind of incredible opportunities for personal growth and transformation that you have in this life, and what incredible abundance and freedom you've been given. And it's such a great opportunity to tap into our gratitude for what we're given. But anyway, I wanted to share all of this with you because I think it's important to remember that whatever challenges we might be going through, whether it's a physical healing or some other kind of transformation, whatever it is, the processing work that we do, the egoic clearing work that we do, it goes way beyond our personal lives. We affect our bloodlines, going back in time as well as forwards in time. We heal the consciousness of the future generations. They become more healed and whole. Rupert Sheldrake talks a bit about that in his Morphic Resonance. If you've ever studied his work, he's an amazing scientist that talks about this. It's been scientifically studied. In other words, I'm not just making this up, but I think you know that. So that's just one example that I'm giving you of the kind of effect that our personal processing has on a larger group. We affect our blood families, yes, but the same principle applies to bigger groups, to the whole collective consciousness of the planet. And that's what we call archetypal healing. And if you don't know what that means, what an archetype means, it's basically a personality type. So for example, if you're a woman, whenever you do healing, your healing affects all women. And if you're Caucasian, your healing affects all Caucasians. And if you're raised in a certain religion, like if you're raised Christian, your healing would affect all people who were raised Christian, and so on. So when you get the idea. So when you go through a change, it's like you open a door in consciousness, not just for your family, but for everybody else on the planet who's in your archetypal collective. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because all of our thoughts and feelings are shared. We're not separate. We think we're separate and individual, but we're not. We share everything with everyone. And there are fields of resonance that connect all humans, and we're especially attuned to the fields of the archetypes or the personalities that we're part of. And I've always found this inspiring because if I ever lack the incentive to process for myself, then it always gives me the incentive to remember that whatever clearing work I do for myself, I'm always doing it for the collective also. And that's my way of giving a gift to my family and to other people. And nobody even has to know about it, but I know that it's happening. I know that it's my act of service on my part, and that's really all that matters. So the changes that you go through and the consciousness clearing that you do affects the collective in more ways than you might realize. And this is the amazing power of changing yourself. So I find it incredibly empowering, and I thought it was important to mention today. And I guess all of these big, very intense changes that are happening for so many people, I've heard from several other people about what they're going through. You know, people who've had surgeries, for example. A lot of people having surgeries or about to have them, and people who are starting new relationships or ending old ones or moving homes or changing jobs or whatever it is. So my guess is that most of you listening can resonate. And I know lots of people experiencing, you know, many kinds of major life change. So since we're talking about change, I thought it might also be a good idea to talk a little bit about our attitude towards change. So just give me another moment. I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay. So the importance of how we cope with change. I know for some people their goal in life is stability. And for the rest of the population, the goal is transformation. And so stability and transformation are this major polarity on our planet. And when you can recognize that polarity in yourself and in other people, you experience a big shift in your consciousness. And if you're somebody who likes to do squares, this is a great square to do, stability and transformation, or stability and change, however you want to call it. If you're new and you don't know what a square is, it's okay. If you're interested, it's a simple journaling technique that's very powerful, and it's in our book, The Marriage of Spirit, which is available on our website or on Amazon, The Marriage of Spirit. And I would assume since you're on this call, you're probably incarnated for transformation. But I think most people on the planet are seeking stability. And all of us are actually a little bit of both, but it's the nature of the ego to want stability and to try to keep things the same and to try to stay in control. So it's a really hard time right now for so many people because there's just not the stability. We just can't, anchor on the things that we usually do. And for those of us who incarnated to experience transformation, we're having a great time, and we're learning to be more and more okay with change with every passing day, and to be okay with mystery and with the unknown and the formlessness and paradox and so on. And I find this really interesting because in traditional Taoism, those things are considered yin qualities, paradox and formlessness and fluidity. Those are all considered yin qualities, the feminine quality. So as we learn to embrace these things like paradox and mystery and the unknown and the fluidity of change, we're learning to embrace our feminine side. And that's a very natural balancing out that needs to happen as we complete the 6,000 or so cycle of, 6,000 years or so cycle of patriarchy and male dominance. So it makes sense, doesn't it? I think it makes sense that we need to find the power in the feminine and focus on that. And I think that's a very important part of our awakening, embracing the power of change, which is the aspect of the feminine, which is part of our balancing the masculine and feminine. We're so out of balance with the masculine that it makes sense that we need to focus now on the feminine energies within us. And I think recognizing all of this helps us to have compassion for the people who are trying to find stability in the world, but who can't find it because the world is in such a huge transformation. So I wanted to talk about one of the most overlooked, let's say, or maybe taken for granted metaphysical truths. And that is how we cope with change is one of the single most important aspects of the journey of awakening. Because change is the only thing that we can be certain of. The irony of change being the only constant, right? Life on earth is about change upon change upon change. We can't avoid change no matter what we do. And we can't control what the changes are going to be. But what we do have control over is our reaction to the changes and how we cope with the changes that come to us. So our attitude towards change is vital, all important. Our attitude towards change defines our quality of life more than maybe anything else. So when life gives us a change that, we might not necessarily have chosen for ourselves, let's say, we tend to feel victimized by it. And that's natural. It's a natural human response. The ego or the personality, whichever you like to call it, it just naturally responds by feeling victimized. And so the key to those situations is how strong is our ability to practice witnessing the personality. And I'm not going to go into what witnessing is right now because I know most of you know about this already, and Leslie and I wrote about it extensively in our book, The Marriage of Spirit. So if you're new and this interests you, you can find out more about witnessing in that book, The Marriage of Spirit. There's a whole chapter on witnessing there. But whenever we experience feeling victimized, we need to practice witnessing. And when we're in the witness, we can remember that feeling of being betrayed by life or by another person is not who we are. We're the pure awareness. We're perceiving the experience of betrayal and loss and grief and anger and fear and victimization and so forth. All those states are passing through us, but it's not who we are. And I know that this is easier said than done, but this is the journey. This is the journey of awakening, and the more that we're able to practice witnessing, the more awake we are. And in fact, I know some people say that enlightenment is just having a really strong witness all the time. So I think it's important to say, we can't expect to just jump into witnessing 100% all the time. If you had that, you'd be awake. And like I said, it's a practice, and it's like learning any musical instrument or any language or a sport. It just takes time. It takes time to become proficient at it. And I think we can all use that reminder that we're not victims of these times. It's important to remember that we chose this. We incarnated for these times. There's no accident that we're here right now. And transcending victim consciousness is the number one process on the planet, as I say often on these calls. It's the main thing that we're all working through. It's what needs to happen in order to birth the new paradigm of the heart. So the more we're able to witness victim consciousness, the more we're contributing to the change. So let me see. I could go on about that, but I'm trying to save a little time today because I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and answers, as well as our guest speaker at the end. So on that note, I think I also wanted to talk about about some of the collective changes that I'm aware are taking place. I'm just going to take another sip of water, so excuse me for a second. So what are some of the collective changes happening right now? And I think it's important to name them because the media would have us believe that the opposite is true. And I know many people are feeling despair, hopelessness, overwhelm, and so forth around a lot of what's happening in the world. So I hope talking about this helps to counteract that. And this isn't just me saying this. There are plenty of other spiritual teachers and seers and people, psychics, and people I trust who are also seeing these same changes taking place. So I'm not alone in talking about this. One is that there's a foundation that's being laid for establishing peace on the planet. And another is that there's a foundation being laid for greater freedom on the planet. And another one is that there's a foundation being laid for, let's say, deeper connections between humans and the rest of the natural world. And I know that as I say this, I'm sure what must be going through some of your minds anyway is like, it just doesn't look like it, it sounds ridiculous because what the media is telling us is the opposite. But it really depends where you look for all these things. So let's just focus for a little bit on the foundation of peace that's being laid. And I just want to highlight that for the past couple of years, we've been encouraged to separate from each other and to go into fear and to polarize with other people and with other groups. And we've been invited to judge people based on, the things we know, like whether or not they wear masks or get a shot in the arm or, all the polarities, the black and the white, the liberals and the conservatives, the men and women, and the list goes on. And I know so many people who've been working on their consciousness to find this. I'm sorry. I have to laugh just because it's like it relieves a little of the tension. I feel like we've been through this. It's been so intense for so long. I think we've all been trying, what I was going to say is that we're all trying to find tolerance and respect for people who we may not agree with. And I know that you know what I'm talking about, and it's in our own families, right? We've all got our stories to tell about the mind-boggling separations that are happening between family members and longtime friends right now. It's pretty surreal and baffling. And so the more that we give into judgment towards another group or a person and separate from them, and we get angry at them or we fear them or whatever it is, the more we do that, the more that we feed the war consciousness inside of us. And of course, that's going to feed the collective war consciousness. And so the more that we process that and the more that we can learn to have tolerance and respect and compassion and even forgiveness and eventually love for these people, the more that we establish ourselves in the open heart and the more that we feed that field of peace, the collective consciousness of peace. And one of the most powerful ways to do this, as we talk a lot about on these monthly calls, is by not taking one side of the polarity, but by holding the tension between both sides of the polarity. When we can just allow other people to have their opinions and not judge them or take a polarity with them, that's how we hold the middle way. And that's how we allow for, as Carl Jung said, it's when we allow for the third option to manifest. And that's the transcendent option. And we don't know what that's going to be. So I feel like we've all been put through this intensive practice in establishing these heart-centered states within us over the past couple of years. I mean, some may feel more successful than others, but we've been practicing, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but lately I know so many people just marveling at how many people who were so angry at each other are just kind of moving on, just like, it's been 2 years, let's let it all go. And, people are getting together again and feeling, like mending fences. And so it's like we've learned this new level of being able to respect and tolerate people who hold different beliefs than we do. And we may not be fully in forgiveness or unconditional love with everybody, but the path into the heart starts with tolerance and respect. And that's definitely happening, and it's growing. So that field of peace has been laid. And it's getting stronger all the time, even though it may not look like it. At least if you rely on the media to tell you what's happening in the world, which I hope you're not doing. And it needs to be said, I think things will probably get worse before they get better. But our job is really just to continue to lay the foundations of peace within us and in the world as best we can. And we do that one step at a time, We do it by processing our anger or fear or judgment of other people for being different from us or whatever it is. And when we do that, we hold that tension between the polarities and we hold the heart state as much as we can. And that's our greatest power. That is how we change the world. It's like CoreLight's tagline, we change the world by changing ourselves. So last month we talked about healing war consciousness and developing peace consciousness, and I just wanted to touch on that a little bit more this month because those energies are definitely still with us. They're still up for us right now. So war has been part of our collective process for millennia, and for many reasons. But it hasn't always been what it is now. It hasn't always been how we know of war nowadays. And there are researchers who say that there was an era pre-patriarchy that was peaceful, and it was more balanced between masculine and feminine than we are currently in the patriarchal era. Because the patriarchal era has been very slanted towards the masculine and towards war, as we all know. And it's been only, patriarchy has been the last 6,000 years or so. And they say that this previous era, which some people call the Neolithic era, it lasted about 10,000 or so years. And there are some anthropologists and archaeologists that say that there's no evidence of, weapons, like massive fortifications or massive weaponry or armies or anything like that. That all came in with this shift into the age of patriarchy. And the evidence also supports that the pre-patriarchal culture was very happy and very peaceful. And they worshipped the great Earth Mother and fertility. And it was a time when women held positions of power. Specifically, they were the priestesses. And much of the focus of the culture was around the sacred aspect of the earth, of Gaia, the feminine. So it was the women who held that power of the priestess. And men had different kinds of power. They had different roles in the society. But anyway, I could go on and on about that. I'm not going to. But if you're interested in that topic, you might want to read a couple of books that I've recommended in the past. One is called The Chalice and the Blade by Rian Eisler, Eisler. And another one is called The Fall by Steve Taylor. And if you want to read a summary of those books, I wrote about them in a couple of chapters in my book, Living with Enlightenment. So if you want to save a little time, you can read chapters 20 and 21 in Living with Enlightenment. It's called The Resurgence of the Feminine, and the other one is The Power of Pilgrimage. So, I don't know, I find it just a huge reassurance. It's like a part of me just relaxes to know that things have not always been the way they are now. And that as humans, we're capable of living in peace. You know, we can coexist with other people on this planet. And so much of it is about balancing the masculine and feminine within us. And I think a lot of us remember those times because we all had lifetimes then. Well, I don't know that all of us have. Maybe most of us listening to this call have. But anyway, I guess what I wanted to say is that war has set up for us this huge set of polarities and wounding and trauma that we've all been working through, you know, in schoolroom Earth for millennia. And in all the lifetimes that we've lived, it's coming to a completion now because so many of us are seeing through this illusion of war, you know, the falseness of it. We're told that war is peace. It's like something out of 1984, if you've ever read that book by Orwell. You know, the Ministry of, what is it called? The Ministry of Truth. And they used a language that they call doublespeak. And the purpose of the Ministry of Peace was to create war. So, I don't know. It seems pretty prescient to me that that's pretty close to the way it is right now. So anyway, this leads me to the final thing I wanted to share with you today. And I feel that it's very hopeful information relating to this topic of ending war consciousness. And this is where I'm going to introduce our guest speaker because I read her recent book called The Science of Channeling: Why You Should Trust Your Intuition and Embrace the Force That Connects Us All by Helané Wahbeh. It's got a study in it that I'm going to share with you when we talk with Helané. So Helané is our guest speaker, and I'm going to introduce her now. She is the Director of Research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, also known as IONS. And I know many of you know IONS. It's a nonprofit that is dedicated to the scientific research of consciousness. And IONS was co-founded by the famous astronaut Edgar Mitchell because he essentially had a profound spiritual experience in space, and when he got back, he wanted to dedicate his life to understanding it, to understanding consciousness. And I know a lot of you on the call know Helané because she's a longtime CoreLighter, and she's a dear, dear friend of ours. And she wrote the foreword to our new edition of Returning to Oneness that came out recently. And Helané's book, The Science of Channeling, came out last year, and I just had a chance to read it. Actually, I didn't read it. I listened to the audiobook. And it's available on Amazon and at other major booksellers. And there's also more about her book on the IONS website, which is noetic.org. That's N like Nancy, Noetic, Noetic.org. So if you go there and you go to the Explore tab, you'll see it there, Science of Channeling. And there's also a course that Helané is teaching on that subject as well. So I need to find Helané. Helané, can you please raise your hand by pressing *2? There you are. Unmute you.
Hello.
Welcome, Helané. Hi.
Yay! Hi, Brad,
Yeah,
and wonderful CoreLight community. So grateful to be with you today.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. This was very last minute, so thank you for just being available. I just got this download, like, you got to contact Helané and see if she'll come and talk. So
Great.
thank you.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
Well, I just want to start by saying I absolutely loved your book, and first of all, I just want to congratulate you. It's brilliant and it's groundbreaking. You know, you've presented scientific studies on channeling, for God's sake. And you got some really, really wonderful endorsements from people like Deepak Chopra, and Dr. Eben Alexander wrote the foreword for your book, and he's one of my favorite authors. He wrote Proof of Heaven. And so I'm just so happy for you. And so before I launch into what I wanted to talk about, I just wanted to ask you to please maybe share a little bit more with us about what the book is about and why you wrote it, and maybe start with what you mean by channeling, because I know you've got kind of a different definition of channeling than most people might think of. So can you share a little bit with us?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brad. So when I use the term channeling, I'm basically referring to this process of accessing or receiving information and energy from beyond what we think of our traditional five senses and space and time. So this is a really broad umbrella term, and it encompasses what many people would think of as intuition, of ESP, of psychic experiences, and of mediumship and trance channeling, which is what many of you may understand as the word channeling. And trance channeling I'm seeing as kind of a subset of this more global experience of channeling. And for those of you who have been with CoreLight for a while, you know Leslie was a channel. She would receive, get guidance from her guides. She would tune into various things. And I'm proposing, and there is evidence to back this up, that all humans have the capacity to channel in some way, and that the way that it shows up for them is unique to them, what we're calling the noetic signature. And so, these channeling experiences show up as intuitive gut hunches or precognitive dreams or, experiences with contact with the dead like mediumship or trance channeling. There's just such a huge, wide variety of experiences that are essentially us tapping into the greater interconnected whole. And the book talks about these experiences. It also gives the 150 years of scientific research that has been done about it that so many people don't know about. And the main purpose in my mind for the book, the underlying motivation, was to really help normalize these experiences, to share about how common they are, and to offer people a sort of guidebook and a sense of hope that they are not alone, that when people have these experiences, they know that they are not alone, that it's likely not a, mental condition that they need to be worried about, and to start guiding them in the process of exploring it more fully. So I'm really grateful for the support I've received from the book and the success that it's received. And I've told Brad this already, but, this work and where I'm at today, I believe could not have been possible without the CoreLight tools. Meeting Leslie and Brad and the whole CoreLight community in 2001. So I can't believe it's been over 20 years. And, I know delving into the Spiritual Warrior program and the teacher training program and actually working the tools, I think has helped me clear enough layers of my ego to step into my power to take these leadership roles and speak about these, mostly taboo topics in our culture to help shift the paradigm around, people thinking that these bodies are all we are, and expanding into that interconnectedness, that non-dual state. So I'll stop there, and I hope that's a nice general summary.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. Thank you, Helané, and thank you for acknowledging CoreLight in your own path. And I feel the same way you do, so I'm with you on that these tools that Leslie gave us are just so incredibly powerful. And, isn't it interesting that you're doing this work? And, Leslie talked about how when she first started her spiritual path and started hearing her guides as a clairaudient, hearing her guides internally, her husband, who was in his residency preparing to be a doctor, more or less threatened to have her locked up. He said the only place I've heard of people hearing their guides is in mental institutions. And so it wasn't that long ago that, it was, it was dangerous to talk about these concepts. So the fact that you're able to bring it all out in a book in this form is truly extraordinary.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, when I first started with IONS, I would start speaking about this topic, and I would have this huge line after my talks. This is pre-COVID days, and people would come and they'd whisper, this happened to me, but I can't tell anybody about it, and I'd get emails like that. Like, there's all these people who are having these experiences who are just completely frightened to talk to anybody about it. Like, there's something wrong with this picture. So I'm really grateful to be kind of playing my small part and opening it up in some way. And I think it has shifted from when I first started this work. Already it's shifted. We see it in the popular media. And I think kind of the general public is definitely more open to having these conversations. Academia is still pretty entrenched, but we're whittling away at it slowly but surely.
Yeah, and I know you're right. It seems to be changing. Like I was talking earlier in the call about the acceleration of the changes. Things seem to be changing day to day, and this is no exception. And I also think I just need to say, God bless Edgar Mitchell, for having the courage as a scientist and an astronaut to start this foundation where you can be doing this work.
Yes, absolutely. We're coming up to our 50th anniversary, which is really exciting. And he had an incredible vision. He was up in his capsule. I mean, he's this, left-brained, engineer-trained astronaut, very, very conservative. And he was up in his capsule coming home from the moon. And this capsule was turning around 360, and he'd see the sun and the Earth and the stars, and it just kept spinning and spinning. And he basically went into a samadhi experience where he just felt completely connected to everything around him and that he was part of everything else. And he obviously never had this experience before, and it just completely blew him away. And he had that just visceral sense of truth about it. As those of you who've experienced a samadhi state know, it's like, oh, this is truth. We are all interconnected. I am part of everything. Everything's part of me. So that just completely transformed him. And he's like, I got to figure out what this is. So I am also very grateful for him to have listened to that transcendent experience that he had and put some action towards it.
Yes. How amazing. Well, before we go into the thing about war that I wanted to highlight, I guess I just wanted to underscore the part of your book that people might be interested in terms of the tools that the book offers to help people to hone their own abilities. And I know it's what you're calling each person's individual, everyone has their own individual qualities, psychic qualities, and you're calling it the noetic signature. Would you like to speak a little bit more about that?
So what, about the noetic signature or the tools to kind of develop it, or both?
Well, I think both. Maybe just share a little bit about both, because I think this is something that's important for people to know about, both.
Sure, absolutely. So along with the experience of taboos around this topic, once people do find those they could speak to about it, there's often this sense of, oh, well, you know, you do it this way, and so your way is better than my way, and yours is stronger than mine. And so another one of my main goals with this work is to support people in, just like, you know, we've been talking about today, about honoring diverse perspectives, is honoring the way our intuitive gifts show up for us, and that not one is better than the other, and that ours is exactly as it should be. And how do we, with a kind of positive awareness that we have this inherent capacity, support ourselves to nurture it, whatever it looks like, whether you feel other people's emotions, whether you get downloaded information in big chunks, whether you see colors or auras around you, whether you feel something in your body or get goosebumps. It's all wonderfully beautiful, and through that loving kindness towards ourselves in our individuality, can use it to support ourselves, to use it to help us make decisions, to tap into our higher wisdom. And I've found this over and over again in my own life and in other people that I've connected with and taught around this, is that our lives become so much smoother, easier, filled with grace when we can kind of get beyond the duality and into this, you know, the ascended states, and tap into our intuition. So that is kind of a general view of the noetic signature. So I've done a number of research studies now to look at this scientifically, if you will, and we polled over 500 people to have them write out what their experiences are. We went through this whole iterative series of analyses to develop a inventory called the Noetic Signature Inventory, and it's 44 items, and it basically tells you where you lie on 12 different characteristics of noetic signature expression. Just to give you some examples, one is like the basic intuitive, I just feel it, I just know it. There's another one that's more grounded in the body, like your stomach clenches or you might get goosebumps. There's another one that's about mental impressions, or what might traditionally be called telepathy. There's another one about healing and actually being able to heal others and heal yourself. So there's 12 of those characteristics, and when you take the inventory, you get a score from 0 to 100 on each one of those. And so we've just got our paper published, accepted for publication, about the inventory, which I'm really, really excited about. And we're launching into more studies to get into the nuances of the characteristics. Do some people have, you know, a few of them that line up together? You know, how does that work in terms of their genetics? Because many of these experiences seem to run in families. Can we use this information to support people in their career choices or other decisions in their life? And does it change over time? So if I take a, you know, remote viewing class, which is, you know, kind of a different word for clairvoyance, will my score on that characteristic shift? Or is this signature something that I'm born with? And I'm speculating that we're probably born with some type of template for what we might be good at or stronger at, and that on top of that, we can also learn through nurturing our various characteristics. We can actually increase our skill in some of the other ones as well. So we're still working on that. And we also have a research department at IONS and also an experience department. So the experience department is working on developing curriculum to help people nurture each of those characteristics if they choose to. So I'm really excited about this noetic signature. I think it's a way to, without the old loaded terms of psychic or ESP, et cetera, to really support people, to nurture this in a safe way. And in my book, I talk about the noetic signature, and I have a whole chapter on if this is a path you want to take, how to support yourself to nurture it. And that, it's important to note that everyone has their own path, and yet we can use our intuition to guide us in terms of what's the next best step to support me on this path of developing my noetic wisdom or my intuitive capacity.
Beautiful. Well, I think it's very important that you're doing this, because the truth is that this needs to be nurtured in each of us. Like I remember something that you said in the book is that I think, or maybe you said it to me in person, I can't remember, but it's literally like there are maybe hundreds or at least dozens and dozens of different, or maybe thousands of types of noetic signatures that we've each got our own different expression of our intuitive abilities. And not only do we not even have names for them, but you've started putting names to them, but they're not encouraged. They're not, they've never been, we've never had an opportunity before to really develop them. So now I think part of what you're doing is helping the world to name them, develop them, acknowledge them, and celebrate them, right?
Absolutely.
Rather than fearing being locked up for being crazy.
Exactly. Absolutely. And, we were talking about the state of the world, and it's easy to feel, overwhelmed or hopeless, et cetera. And yet when we can tap into our core, as CoreLight teaches us to do, and tap into this noetic wisdom, then, how we interact, how we treat ourselves, how we interact with others, the choices we make in our life are so much more easeful, supportive. And this is like on a smaller scale. But then you think about all these issues that we're dealing with on our planet, tapping into guidance and wisdom from beyond our small selves, from my perspective, can only be helpful, because the small self is not doing a great job right now, right? So how do we,
Indeed.
So how do we tap into this, greater wisdom? And, people always ask me, oh, well, can it be used for bad? And, can't you get into this great state and then create havoc? I've done some reading on this, and, for the most part, it seems like there's this universal blocker that when your intent is not great, that it just doesn't work, or
right.
It works in some smaller way. And that overwhelmingly, when people directly experience their intuitive guidance, which often leads to, transcendent samadhi, interconnected states, the desire to harm themselves or others, it's just not there.
Right.
And there's been a whole wealth of studies also done on just the benefits of doing this work. People have improved quality of life. They have more meaning in their life. They have transformative experiences, just, loss of fear of death. I mean, the list goes on and on about the positive benefits that people experience when they have these, channeling experiences. Again, I'll say for the most part.
Right. Well, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because what's happening with our psychic abilities is we're being shown that there is no separation, that we are all connected, that other person is actually part of me. And so therefore, how could I harm it? How could I create a war with that country or, hate that person because they're an extension of me? So it makes sense that as we develop these qualities, the more peaceful we become and the less war there would be. Yeah. Well,
and the other thing I get really excited about, and this leads to the next topic that I know you wanted to talk about, which is, another main point about all this is that our dominant worldview from, science, etc., is that our consciousness is limited to our physical brain, and that our brain is what's creating our consciousness. So, in CoreLight and many, many traditions around the world, this is kind of nonsense. It's like, of course, our consciousness can expand beyond our body, beyond our physical brain. It can experience things at far distant locations and also across time, because our human cells see time moving in this linear direction, and yet there is a sense of timelessness when you step outside of that. And I think that leads to what I think, Brad, you wanted to talk about today, which was this remote viewing project. Do you want to give a little context for your interest in it, or?
Sure. I guess what inspired me, many things about your book inspired me, don't get me wrong, but since today I was feeling we needed to talk more about healing war consciousness. I remembered the study from your book that was done on remote viewing. And for people who don't know, remote viewing that's a phenomenon where, somebody goes into a meditative state and they can see things in a remote location. And it's a pretty amazing experience, and people can be taught to do it. I've done it a few times, and I've had some success. And I've watched documentaries about people who are teaching it, and there are some people who are really, really good at it. And I know that for decades, intelligence agencies in many different countries, including the U.S. and Russia, they've used remote viewing covertly for decades because it works so well, because they've used it to spy on each other. And there's a great and there's this great documentary called Third Eye Spies, and it's on Amazon Prime, and it's on Gaia.com, and it's this extraordinary story, and it essentially is the story of Russell Targ. And Russell Targ was at the center of the development of that program, and I know that he's one of your employees at IONS, right?
He was, we're associated with him, but he's not currently an employee, no. But Dean Radin, who is our chief scientist, worked very, very closely with him, and that military program was called Stargate. And, that was funded by the U.S. military, like you said, for decades. And they had, hundreds of accurate remote viewing missions, and they would bring soldiers in and train them how to do this. And there's currently, remote viewing teachers around the world that teach these courses. And remote viewing is one of the, it has the strongest evidence from research studies for its verifiable effects. So, people have done, thousands and thousands of remote viewing trials, and, people can accurately, extend their consciousness, or however you want to describe it, to access information about distant places. There is a famous remote viewer who saw the rings of Saturn before they actually saw them with telescopes. Anyway, I could go on and on with examples about that.
It's fascinating, right?
It is fascinating. It is fascinating. And to me, it's just such a clear demonstration that our consciousness is not locked to our physical brains and bodies, and that we can, through our interconnectedness, tap into information outside of that. So, Brad had mentioned to me this project similar to that I wrote about in my book that was done by Stefan Schwartz, and he's an incredible researcher in this field and has been for, I think, about 40, 50 years. And he actually has done some of the most evidential remote viewing experiments. He found archaeological sites. He found buried shipwrecks. He found all these incredible, places and objects that people could have no way of knowing about using remote viewers, talented remote viewers. And, his goal was to always show that, hey, this actually works. It's practical, with very strict control conditions. Anyway, he was really curious if we could remote view the future and what the future would look like. And so he did one project where he remote viewed 2050, and more recently has added to that to remote view 2060 to see what the future looked like. So before I don't know if you want me to share what he talked about, Brad, but before I do, I want to just give my personal perspective / speculation about time and the future. My sense from, everything I've read and my personal experience is that the future is not set in stone. So like when I read you this list, that may not be that this is exactly how it's going to happen, that it's like probabilities, and that there are certain futures that may appear more probable than others from this point in time. And as we get closer to that, that maybe it shifts a bit. And maybe some of you have gone to mediums or psychics where they tell you something about the future and then it doesn't come true, or maybe it does come true. And, just you having that information can often change things. So I guess I want to be clear that when I'm reading this, that I don't necessarily feel that the future is set in stone, that it's probabilities, and that this is a likely future that these, 1,000 remote viewers saw. Do you want to add anything to that, Brad?
I would just say that's a great qualifier. I mean, that's my understanding as well, that, there's nothing set in stone. We change the future by changing our present actions and our present thoughts. And so there are timelines, many, many, many different timelines, and each one is different, but there are these probabilities based on how the world looks right now. So that being said, I think this is what I wanted to share with the group specifically, is that the remote viewing of 2050 and 2060, and as it related to war, but there's more. So please, you take it over to explain what the remote viewers saw.
Yeah. So I just got this new data release from Stefan Schwartz. I actually emailed him and said, hey, can you tell me anything new about this project? So the 2060 project's not quite done yet, but he gave me this snippet, preliminary data on it. And what they do is they have 1,000+ people do remote viewing, and they ask them very specific questions like, what does it look like in a hospital? And what does it look like in our government seat, etc. So this is just, I'm going to give you some bullet points here. So between 2040 then they collate all the answers from these 1,000 people, and then these are the major themes that were most common from all of them. So that's where this information is coming from. So between 2040 and 2045, there are several very dramatic changes that alter the structure of human culture worldwide. It is not clear yet what they are, but two obvious candidates seem to be climate change and the end of the carbon energy era, which will have major technological and geopolitical implications. So that's really fascinating. By 2060, there will be elimination of carbon-powered vehicles, and an increased focus on automobile and truck manufacturers to convert to non-petroleum powered vehicles. We see that already, but it's great to see if that would be manifest. People have largely organized into small communities. In the United States, in contrast to white supremacy and male-dominant movements so prominent today, racial and gender issues are no longer of importance. By 2060, people don't seem to move around as much, although air travel does still exist. Lifestyles seem much more minimalist, much more like Nordic and Dutch aesthetic. The United States still exists, at least in form, but real political power has devolved to states and regions because of radically different ways in which states have planned for and accommodated for climate change in these migrations. The medical health system has shifted to be more equitable, and there's a very different way that we would be handling cash. So these are just very big picture snippets, but nowhere in there is an apocalyptic future or a world where, you know, there's war everywhere, that there is a adaptation, and I see it as resilience to kind of shift these overarching structures that have currently been causing harm, if you will. So I'll stop there and see if you want to share anything.
Well, look, we could talk for hours about all of this. It's so fascinating. But I think the thing that interested me the most was the part about war. Was there anything, shall I talk about it, or is there something you wanted to share?
Yes, go ahead, because from the 2061, it was more about various different structures. But what it is... Well, yeah, go ahead.
What I recall from the book, and again, it was an audio book, so I couldn't look back and, you know, find the words. But what I recall from the audio book was that what all of the viewers saw, as of 2050, there is no more war. Am I recalling correctly?
Nuclear war. Would there be nuclear war within that time frame? That was the specific question that I remember, and I don't have the book in front of me right now. And the answer was a clear no, that there was no nuclear war, that the Earth was still around, and that we would not destroy ourselves. I don't know about specific, conflicts, but those points that I just read from 2060 don't sound like there's war going on. People are, this whole movement to be locally sustainable, to build communities locally and support each other, kind of sounds like that's filters out. And the whole carbon, transportation, I think it's non-carbon transportation, again, is huge. So I'll have to go back to the book, but no nuclear war, which I think in and of itself is important. We can focus on that piece.
Okay. Well, is there more that you want to share around any of that?
I think that those are great nuggets for now. Okay. And I think that we, again, going back to highlighting the importance of, I didn't mention this in quite this way, but, in our world, we're so externally focused, and we have so much coming at us from the outside. And how do we, take the nuggets that are important and yet be internally focused in terms of our wisdom for what our next step should be. So instead of, and of course Leslie and CoreLight talks about this all the time, projecting our authority outside of ourselves, really reclaiming and empowering ourselves to tap into that intuitive wisdom for what is in our highest and best moving forward. And I I don't think I'm naive, but maybe I am, but I really feel like that is what is going to help humanity. And this, sacred activism as individuals from within to do our work, to clear our shadow, to, do our practices, to see our human imprint, to see all those patterns and work to clear them, will bring us to the future that we want to see.
I think that's a great note to end on, Helané. I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And I wish we had more time. I'm looking at the time, and I still need to. We have some questions and answers to take care of today. So
yes, absolutely.
I'm
Thank
so
you
sorry
so much for having me. No, this is more than I even imagined.
Well, there's just before you go, is there anything else you'd like to tell people about your work? If people want to get in touch with you or learn more about your work, what would you tell them?
Please go to our website, noetic.org. We have a wealth of information. We have courses. We have all of our publications and research on there. You can participate in our research study. I'm about to actually start up a new Noetic signature inventory study, either next week or the following, where you can take it and get your results on the characteristics. Please plug into the IONS community, and there's just so much resources there for you if you're interested.
And I highly recommend it. And Helané, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations once again on your wonderful book. I highly recommend your book to everybody, The Science of Channeling.
Thank you so much, Brad. It's such a pleasure. Big love to you all. Bye-bye. I'm going to stay on for the meditation and such, but I'm going to close my phone. Bye-bye.
Great, thanks. Okay, so I'm just skipping ahead to the questions because we still have about 10 minutes left, and I can squeeze in a couple of questions. So in case you're new, the way the questions work is you can email us your questions in advance to courses@corelight.org. And if you're on the web call, you can type in your questions on the Q&A board, and we'll check those for next month's call. And it's not possible for me to answer all the questions, but I do read them all, and I get to as many of them as I can. And just know that if your question doesn't get answered, it might get answered the next month. If it doesn't get answered by me, answers always come from somewhere. So once you ask the question, you can be assured you'll get an answer from a dream or, in meditation or another teacher or a book or something. So the first one is from Vayara from Bulgaria. Each time you advise us to radiate love and to balance opposites. This creates peace in relationships, but is difficult in everyday life. Sometimes it's disturbing for me to talk with people who have thoroughly different views on the two major present-day issues that will shape our life in the future. They're not interested in other than the controlled media viewpoints, and they don't want to seek the truth for themselves. And they even spread false information. I don't feel like arguing with them, and I prefer not to communicate with them anymore. However, our future and the future of the Earth depend on the collective consciousness, doesn't it? In order to make that shift, our planet needs more awakened people. True, it seems useless to try to awaken one who is asleep, but doesn't that slow down the evolution of the human race? First of all, Vera, thank you so much for your question. I can feel your desire to help the planet and to help other people, and I can also feel your frustration with not being able to get through to people, and I know that probably everybody on the call can relate. Doesn't matter, what your beliefs are, it's just everybody wants to convince everybody else. So it's been hard. It's been really hard. So I empathize with you. And I think we covered a little bit of this in today's call, but I'll try to speak a little bit to you specifically about what you're sharing here. I feel like this is a very individualized path. There's no set rule about whether or not somebody should, try to dialogue with someone else or try to share your viewpoint or not share or whatever. So it's good to make these decisions on a case-by-case basis. And I know people who pick and choose very carefully whether or not they feel it's important to share their views with another person. And if it's somebody they feel very close to, you know, they might say something like, well, before you decide to get the shot or not get the shot or whatever it is, you know, let me have 2 hours of your time to share with you what I know. And then you can make up your own mind. But if I don't share with you what I know, I won't feel okay that I didn't do everything I could to help you. And so I like that approach. You know, I feel like when there are people that we really love and we care for tremendously, we want to help them if we can by sharing what we know. So the trouble, and we've talked about this before, but the trouble is that depending on what kind of news a person seeks out, you know, they're getting the viewpoint of whoever the financial supporter of that news outlet is. And they may, you know, they might be being told the opposite of what you're discovering. And so, you know, they have the same opinion about you as you have about them. It's opposites. So they think they're doing the research and you aren't. And they think they have the right information and that you're being misled. And meanwhile, you know, the opposite is also happening. So it's just incredibly challenging, you know, and beyond frustrating. It's obviously a setup, as we call it, something that we need to work through and process our way through. So honestly, I'm not sure that anybody really knows what's going on, except that it's very clear we're being manipulated. We're being manipulated to separate and to get angry with each other. You know, one side being told one thing, the other side being told the opposite. Well, of course, it's going to create conflict. It's absolutely surreal. I just find myself using that word surreal daily, frequently. And I think it's a good idea to find independent researchers and news outlets who don't receive financial support from corporations or governments or political parties or, you know, anybody with a vested financial interest in whatever is being reported. I mean, I like, for example, if you know a pharmaceutical company is sponsoring the news station or they sponsored the report that the news is reporting, then, well, can you really expect an unbiased report? I don't think so. So anyway, I think your question is really about whether or not we should try to help people awaken in order to speed up the planetary shift. So there are a few things I'll say about that. And again, overall, I would say it's very individualized, and we need to decide person by person. There's no rule to follow there. But I would also add that we need to remember, excuse me, that the greatest gift that we can give the Earth and our fellow humans is our own awakened consciousness. So I think the best use of our time is I keep coming back to focusing on where we each have more awakening to do within us. And how can we become a more joyful, a more heart-centered person more of the time? And what shadows of our own do we need to clear? So for example, if we're feeling frustrated by the way other people think or behave, and if we have any kind of judgment about them, then we can find a way to process whatever it is inside of us that's preventing us from being in pure and unconditional love and forgiveness and compassion with that person. And it can get pretty subtle, you know. And really, sometimes we just can't do it alone. We need a friend or a counselor or coach, somebody who might be able to help us to see our blind spots, where we might be stuck in a subtle kind of judgment, or where we hold an unforgiving attitude towards somebody. And if you have somebody like that in your life, you're very blessed. And if you don't, then you can pray and manifest that person. You can set an intention with the universe for help, you know, for someone to arrive to help you, to help with seeing, to help with the ability to clear and process the shadows that keep the heart closed some of the time. So lastly, I guess I would add that a lot of us feel just so incredibly frustrated with how things are going. that, we're honestly pretty angry at some level of our being. And I think it's important to acknowledge that that's okay, I mean, it's okay to get angry. It's natural to feel angry right now. And I think if we're not feeling angry about the way certain things are going on our planet, then there's probably something wrong because it's not going very well in a lot of ways. So if that's happening to you, my suggestion would be to allow yourself to feel the anger, let it out. Be sure to remember to witness while you do it. Practice witnessing and just do whatever kind of anger clearing works for you and just let it rip, You beat the pillow on the bed, you scream into the pillow, you do whatever you need to do to welcome the anger and witness it and express it, release it, let it go, and then move on. So, okay, I see we've run out of time. I'm so sorry, but I hope that helps, and I thank you, Viara. I hope that helps you with your question, and I appreciate your asking. It's a very good question. I'm just going to do one more quickly. We'll go over a little bit, but there's one more question I feel like I'd like to mention here. So this is from Emmanuelle, and she says, I'd like to address the topic of grief and how difficult it is dealing with the loss of a beloved. It's like living in a different world. The intensity of the sadness and missing is a real struggle to overcome. I realize life is just temporary, but I find it very challenging to find any sort of balance again. The void is so intense. So, thank you for the sharing and for raising this issue, Emmanuelle. It's a really, really important one, and we did talk a little bit today about grief. We've talked a lot about grief in previous calls, but let me just see what comes forward to share with you right now about it. I guess first, I just want to say I completely resonate with your question. I've also lost people who, my whole world centered around. So I know how hard this is. And the struggle is very real and very intense. And it can take years to get over the hump of the grief. And even then, I don't know that we're ever really fully over the grief. I believe that grief's a journey, and we navigate that journey step by step every single day. And we probably take that journey with us until we drop our bodies, to the very end. So I think the big thing that's coming to me to say is that the issue is that we wear these physical animal bodies that are warm and so sensitive, and we just miss the warmth of the touch of our beloved, and that that warm animal body of ours wants to be held and stroked, or we want to hold and stroke our beloved, and so we just physically and emotionally miss that part. And there are all those different levels of grieving the loss of somebody, especially the physical and the emotional. They run very deep in us. For me, I feel like I got over a major hurdle of grief when I took a few months away, just to be on my own and to allow myself to do whatever I needed. Like if I needed to cry all day, I would just do that. And so really it's about allowing the heart to have its due. And with all that being said, I also know how important it is when we're grieving to have a strong witness. And I think this might be the most important thing I wanted to share with you today. So in other words, before you allow the sadness and the crying to pass through you, you start with a prayer, or you start with setting an intention, and you say to the universe or to spirit, I know that I'm pure awareness, and I'm the perceiver through which these emotions are passing, and I know that this body's temporary. It's not who I am. I'm not the emotions. I'm not the personality. I'm not the body. So I'm claiming my witness right now, I'm claiming that self to come in, and I allow the emotions to pass through so that I can let them go, and so that I can move on. And then it's only after that prayer that you start crying and screaming and hitting the pillow or whatever it is that you want to do to release the grief. And then when that feels complete, you let it go and you move back into peace or joy or a higher state, as much as you're able to. I think the issue is that if we don't say that prayer, we don't set that intention to have a strong witness, then when we grieve, we can make the pain more intense and more real. And it's like if it were a record, we'd be deepening the groove, making the groove even deeper. So we actually make the pain worse when we do it without the witness. So when I tune in on you, Emmanuel, I get the feeling that what might be helpful is to find a grief counselor to help you. Sometimes it's just not possible to do it on our own, and we just need some extra support. And that's a good thing to recognize. And there are people who specialize in grief counseling. They know how to help us to release and let go and to move on and to find joy in life again, because it's important to remember that that's why we came here, is to experience joy. And it's important to remember that when one door closes, another one opens. It's never just the loss, right? There's always something new waiting for us. So I wonder if you already have somebody like that in your life, a grief counselor, and if not, then can you find somebody who could help you? And if you don't have somebody already, I would recommend starting to look for that person. And, you can call on your spiritual guides to help you manifest the perfect person. And if you've already tried that, I'm getting the feeling that there might be somebody new who could help you. But I just get the feeling that there's somebody that you might find, and it might be through, like, your network of friends. And I get that you're going to know the right person when you find them. So you might interview a few people and then use your intuition to see who feels right to you. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you again for bringing up this topic, Emmanuel. I wish you all the best with this journey. All right, friends. I'm sorry we've gone over a little bit today, and I thank you for hanging in there. And I'm just so grateful to be on this call with you. And I especially want to thank our friend Helané again for joining us. Really loved your energy as part of this call today. And thank you again for the beautiful book that you wrote. So let's close with just a minute or two of prayer, just to close our sacred circle for today. So I invite you to just pause and be still. Close your eyes and take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Just letting go. If anything got stirred up for you today, this is the time to just breathe in the light and the love that you are, and breathe out any shadow, watching the shadow drift off into the horizon like a cloud of smoke, disappearing. So we give thanks. We give thanks for this time that we share together, and we give thanks for the opportunity to share our love and to receive the love and the light that's always surrounding us, to take in this field of peace and healing energy that we can tap into any time. But there's something powerful when we do it together on these calls in a group. Again, whether you're with us in the present time or future time, doesn't matter. We send our prayer for peace and love for ourselves, for each other, for this planet, for all life. We send it out in all directions. So just visualize it radiating out from your heart, like that beautiful radiant sun in the center of your chest. Just feel it glowing and radiating out your love and your light. All directions, encompassing the earth. Feeling connected to everyone on this call, all over the world, many different countries. We thank the Great Spirit, and we thank the natural world. We thank Mother Earth, Gaia herself, for the gift of this life. All the adventures and transformation, the opportunity to midwife the birth of this new paradigm of the heart. So many exciting changes amidst all the challenges. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alalaho. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I love you and look forward to seeing you next month. Lots of love. Bye for now.